Hi, hello all, and welcome to the Hindu Live. We are going to talk about the U.S. strikes on Iran. As you may have seen in the news, that the United States, the U.S. has carried out a two-pronged approach. Its B-2 bombers have attacked Iran's Fordo nuclear plant, which is near Tehran. And Fordo is one of the most fortified Iranian nuclear facilities, which was buried deep underground. So when the United States carried out airstrikes on Fordo, American submarines also launched Tomahawk missiles into two other Iranian major nuclear plants, one Natanz and so Natanz and Esfahan were earlier attacked by the Israelis when Israel launched its attack on Iran on June the 13th. So President Donald Trump said later that he has completely obliterated, quote unquote, the Iranian nuclear program. So you have Planet Labs satellite imagery, which was analyzed by Associated Press, and the AP report says that you can see damage at the entry point of Fordo. But we don't know whether Fordo was completely destroyed, because Fordo was actually buried underground a mountain. But there is, you can see damage at the entry point. And the United States, actually the US President Donald Trump talked to Sean Hannity of Fox News. And according to Hannity, what President Trump said was that the American B-2 bombers 6 bunker buster bombs at Fordo. So these bunker buster bombs are some 30,000-pound bombs, which are heavy. And each bomb, how they operate, according to defense analysts, is that the bomb will go deep inside, up to 200 meters, and then explode. Many defense analysts believed before the American strike that 2 bunker buster bombs would be required to destroy the Fordo nuclear facility. According to Shanti, the United States B-2 bombers, they dropped some 6 bombs in Fordo and dozens of Tomahawk missiles at both Esfahan and Natanz. So this has dramatically escalated the crisis, right? Israel launched this war on June 13th, and the United States of America and Iran were still technically in talks, because they were scheduled to have the 6th round of their negotiations on June 15th. And then the Israelis started the war, and the Iranians hit back. And then the Israelis realized that they won't be able to finish the job alone, because, to destroy Fordo, you need these bunker buster bombs, which Israel doesn't have. And you need aircraft bombers, their strategic bombers carry such bombs, which also Israel doesn't have. And Israel's attacks on even Natanz. On Natanz, Israel carried out massive bombing, but there was no evidence to suggest that Natanz was completely destroyed. The IAEA said that overground facility of Natanz was destroyed, but Natanz also has a deep underground facility. And the fact that the United States carried out attacks on all 3 nuclear facilities, Natanz, Esfahan, and Fordo, that suggests that even the Americans and the Israelis themselves believe that the Israeli strikes on Natanz and Esfahan did not have the desired impact. So Israel was not able to meet their objectives alone, and Iranians started hitting back on June 13th itself. And over the, if you look at the damage, the sites in Israel, the Iranians hit Tel Aviv, Haifa, Beersheba. The Iranians hit in several places across Israel. And there were reports in American media that Israel's missile defense systems were, especially Arrow. And Israel had claimed that they had taken out at least half of Iran's missile launchers, but that did not diminish that did not blunt Iran's firepower. So the Iranians continued to attack Israel. So on the one side, Israel was not able to destroy Iran's nuclear facilities, and on the other side, Israel was not able to intercept or deter Iranian missile attacks. So Israel was in a box, kind of. Israel was in a cul-de-sac. So Israel was left with no other option but to turn to the United States. And the initial response after Israel launched the war was that he was open for a dialogue. And Trump and Marco Rubio warned the Iranians not to attack the American facilities in the region, in West Asia. And the Iranians did not attack the Americans. They were very careful. So they kind of focused on their targets in Israel. But still, it was the United States that decided to join the war. Why did the United States join the war? Because Israel was not able to meet its objectives, and Israel was kind of stuck in its war against Iran. So the Americans come, and the American bombers attack the nuclear facilities. And now Donald Trump says that he has completely destroyed Iran's nuclear facilities. And you have Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who said that, I mean, he issued two statements, one in English, in which he thanked President Donald Trump. He said, President Trump and I mean Netanyahu, always said that peace comes through strength. So the United States tonight decided to act with strength, and then we can hope for peace. In his Hebrew language message, which is largely addressed to his domestic audience, Prime Minister Netanyahu said that I promised that I will destroy Iran's nuclear facilities, and we destroyed Iran's nuclear facilities. So this is the message from the Israelis. So what the Iranians did immediately after the US strike was to launch another volley of ballistic missiles and drones towards Israel, and there are impact sites. So we are at a very critical moment of this escalating conflict. For example, Qataris issued a statement this morning that there could be dangerous consequences because Qatar hosts the largest American air base, the American military base in the region. The United States has up to 10,000 soldiers stationed in Qatar. Reports about there are speculations about what the Iranians are going to do next. We don't know, but I think whatever the Iranians are going to do, if they decide to escalate the conflict by hitting American bases in the region, that could again dramatically escalate the conflict. So this is a critical moment. I think Trump has a president who called himself a peacemaker, and who had actually attacked President Biden, blamed him for the Ukraine war. And Donald Trump had repeatedly said that if he were the president, the Ukraine war wouldn't have begun in the first place. And he was very critical of American presidents in the past for the Iraq war. And Donald Trump's vice president, J.D. Vance, he calls the Iraq war, it was the biggest strategic disaster. And he even attacked the Europeans for not doing enough to stop the Iraq war. And the same administration has now joined the war against Iran on behalf of the Israelis. So this is what we have now. And the next steps Iran is going to take will basically decide where the conflict is headed to. Introduction of the conflict, and I'm happy to take questions. Please feel free to post your questions, and I'll be around for some time, and then I will answer your questions about the region and the conflict. So what could Iran do next? So there were before the United States joined the war, Iran has multiple options. So one thing is that Iran can shut down the Strait of Hormuz. You know how important the Strait of Hormuz is. Strait of Hormuz is a narrow strait that is connecting the Gulf to Oman, and the Gulf of Oman operates the Arabian Sea. So Gulf of Hormuz is also a strait through which some 20% of the global oil passes through. And if Iran shuts down the Strait of Hormuz, and Iranian Navy has the capability to do that energy prices will spike. And that's going to impact all of us, including the Indians, right? Indians, the Chinese, and because India is heavily dependent on, more than 85% of our energy demands are met through imports. So this is going to impact us very bad. So that is one option. And another option is that when the Iranians shut down the Strait of Hormuz, the Houthis can again start attacking vessels in Bab el-Mandeb and the Red Sea. So Bab el-Mandeb is another choke point. If you look at the map, you will understand. So Bab el-Mandeb is connecting the Red Sea, and the Red Sea in the north is opens into the Mediterranean through the Suez, right? So it's a very important artery. So Bab el Mandeb connects the Red Sea with the Gulf of Aden, which again opens into the Arabian Sea. So the Houthis in the past had carried out multiple strikes in this region. The Houthis striking oil, which means two major arteries for global trade, especially energy trade. One is in the Bab el Mandeb, the Red Sea route, and the other is in the Persian Gulf, can be affected if the Iranians decide to retaliate. That is one option. Another option is, mentioned earlier, for Iran is to target American bases in the region. So if they decide to do that, it is possible that they will hit American base in Iraq first. And Iran also has, a very powerful militant network in Iraq, which is called Hashad al-Shabi. And the Hashad it's also called the Popular Mobilization Units. They are Shia militia groups. It includes many organizations. So there's Kataib Hezbollah. So these groups can also start attacking the US bases, basically the US base and the embassy compound in Iraq. So that is another option. But, if you look at President Trump's statement as of now, in his Truth Social immediately after the attack, what the US president said is that we met our goals, whatever. We destroyed the facilities and this is time for peace. So he signals that he doesn't want to carry out further airstrikes in Iran, and then he wants maybe Iran to come to talks. So what Iran decides is also going to be important. So if Iran shuts down the Strait of Hormuz, or if Iran attacks American bases in the region, to begin with in Iraq, that means the United States will come back. Now that the United States has joined the war, the US will come back to attack, and Iran will attack further American bases. So in that scenario, the war will get uglier, right? So this is the situation we are actually witnessing now. So one question is, what are the chances of India, China, and Russia joining forces in a kinetic assault? No, I think the chances are nil, almost impossible. India is definitely not going to join any kind of military operation because India doesn't think that it should get involved in it in the first place. But the Chinese and the Russians have greater stake. India also has a stake. I'll explain to you. Let's look at it from India's point first. Clear, this region is critically important for India. One thing is for the energy security, because roughly 85 to 89% of our energy demand is met through imports. And this region, depending on which year you are looking at, 30 to 50% of India's crude oil imports are coming from Persian Gulf and other West Asian countries, including Iraq and the Gulf kingdoms. And 70% of India's gas imports, natural gas imports, are coming from this region. So imagine how important this region is for us, right? And the conflict spilling over into the Gulf is also is a nightmarish scenario for India. Why? Because we have 9 million Indians are living and working in the Gulf. Right now, I am sitting in Doha when I talk to you. I mean, at this point of time, everything seems to be pretty quiet here. But if you look at, Qatar, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and other Gulf countries, some 9 million Indians are here. How difficult it is to bring a few thousands of Indians back home from a conflict zone. So imagine if the crisis spreads across the Gulf region, then that would be really, really chaotic. And the third option is the geopolitical importance of Iran. I know there are strategic analysts who believe that a nuclear Iran is not in India's interest, which could be true because India might not like another nuclear power in its vicinity. But at the same time, a destabilized Iran, a bombed out Iran with a weak regime, and a unipolar Middle East, a unipolar West Asia controlled by the United States and its allies and client states is also not in India's interest. That's a setback for multilateralism. And Iran has historically played an important role, an important gateway between India and Central Asia. Destabilizing the Iranian regime is not in India's interest. And also, this kind of attacks the Iranians and the Americans are carrying out. This is a naked violation of international law. And India had always called for upholding international law, upholding sovereignty, even in the case of Ukraine. Even though India did not condemn Russia directly, India had repeatedly called for upholding international law and respecting the territorial integrity and sovereignty of all member countries of the United Nations. So you look at it, from an economic point of view, you look at it from a geopolitical point of view, and point of view, the point of view of international law, this war doesn't serve India's interests. But India was initially reluctant to condemn the attack. That we know that India has distanced itself even from the SCO statement. I hope India will revisit it because this conflict is not in India's interest. So that is one thing. And if you look at the Chinese and the Russians, you see the Russians have actually deep stake in it because Iran is a strong strategic partner. For China, Iran is an economic partner. But China has historically been reluctant to get involved in other conflicts, right? China always, their priority is to take care of their economic interests in the regions that lie beyond its periphery. In its immediate periphery, China is much more muscular, whether it is in South China Sea, East China Sea. China is much more muscular, but beyond its immediate periphery, China's immediate focus is on its economic interests, not on getting involved in military conflicts. Chinese are not going to get involved in it. They had issued strong statement in the past, in the recent past, asking for peace. President Xi Jinping had expressed deep worries over the Israeli strikes in Iran, and the Russians and the Chinese had also issued a joint. But beyond that, will China do something? No, I doubt so. And you look at the Russians. See, the Iranians are strategic partners, and the Russians had initially the Russian response was that they will mediate between the Israelis and the Iranians. But then the Kremlin said the Israelis were not open for mediation, of course, because if Israel agreed to cease fire, that is defeat for Prime Minister Netanyahu, right? Because he was not able to destroy Iran's nuclear facilities through the Israeli strikes. So that would be tantamount to accepting a defeat, which Mr. Netanyahu was not ready to do it. And then the Russians had warned the United States against attacking Iran. But the Russians never said that we will defend Iran militarily. President Putin didn't say that. The Kremlin didn't say that. So the Russians also basically kept themselves off the conflict. Why? Maybe because the Russians are preoccupied with Ukraine, right? Or they did not want to get entangled in another conflict in the region. So I don't know, but I doubt that at this point of time, Russia will in any way, definitely not in its offensive capacity. But what the Russians could have done is to tell the Americans and the Israelis that if the United States supports Israel, that we could support Iran's defenses. But the Russians haven't said that, not until now. So I don't foresee a scenario where other major powers, definitely you rule India out, that's not going to happen. Even when it comes to China and Russia, I don't foresee a scenario where they will get involved in the conflict, even from a defense point of view. I don't know. I mean, the question is whether Iran will open the strait to countries like China and India. It depends, I think, how we conduct our diplomacy. And we still don't know what the Iranians are going to do with the strait. If they're going to mine the Strait of Hormuz, it's going to impact all of us. But mining of Hormuz is not in India's interest. It's not in China's either. When the Houthis attacked, Houthis did not mine Bab el-Mandeb. They started launching missile attacks and drones at the tankers passing through Red Sea. When the Houthis did that, what the Indians and the Chinese did was to directly deal with the Iranians. India had sent Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar to Tehran to meet the Iranian leaders to make sure that Indian ships are spared. So India might do such diplomacy even if Strait of Hormuz is closed. But if they are going to mine the Strait of Hormuz, then I think everybody is going to get affected. That's what is going to do. And if that happens, even if the Iranians close down Strait of Hormuz, that would also mean that the United States would start attacking Iranian Navy, the IRGC Navy. So that is also an outcome. So first we have to wait and see what the Iranians are going to do next. So Iran has certain options. Iran clearly has. But the dilemma Iran is facing at this point of time is that all these options would lead to further escalation. Whether it is closing down the Strait of Hormuz, whether attacking American bases, or whether attacking oil facilities in the Persian Gulf, all the countries in the Gulf are American allies. So these are the options Iran has. But all these options will escalate the crisis. So the question here is whether Iran has the stomach to escalate the crisis further. Iran surprised the world when it was Israeli attack, definitely, because Israel themselves believed that their initial strike would cripple the Iranian regime, because Israel had taken out most of Iran's chain of command on June the 13th. And they carried out massive bombing. They continued to carry out massive bombing in Iran. But we know that Iran hit back, and Iran hit back with hundreds of ballistic missiles. And Iran overpowered and exhausted Israel's famed multi-layered missile defense systems. And even now, Iran continues to hit Israeli cities. So Iran basically surprised the world with its counterattack capabilities. So the question now is whether Iran has the stomach to escalate the conflict further by American bases, American aircraft carriers, American, ships deployed in the region. So that's the question that we have to wait and see. Not from any Middle Eastern country. The United States has a base in Diego Garcia. The US also has a military base in Guam. So there were some reports that the B-2 bombers basically, first deployed to Guam. From Guam, they moved to Iran. So not from any Middle Eastern country, because even when the United States deployed B-2 bombers, they deployed B-2 bombers to Diego Garcia some time ago, not just before. Initially, they were stationed in Diego Garcia. So that also means that the Gulf countries here, Saudi Arabia or the UAE, they were not keen to host the B-2 bombers. Everybody foresaw this happening because the Gulf countries did not want to directly get entangled in the war, so they stayed out of it. Their fear was that if the United States uses their bases to attack Iran, Iran would attack their oil facilities. Remember, in 2019, Iran had knocked off half of Saudi Arabia's oil production. So the Gulf kingdoms do not want to get stuck in a conflict between Iran and the United States. So not from any Gulf or West Asian countries that numbers took off. So Pakistan's involvement, we don't have facts about it. But the interesting backstory is that I think timing of the meeting between Pakistan's General Asim Munir and US President Donald Trump, I doubt that was accidental. And Trump himself said that we had discussed issues including Iran. And he said he agreed with me. They agreed with me. This is what he posted, which means the Pakistanis agreed with him. What did he agree? We don't know, right? So I think America wants Pakistan. Why? Because if the crisis escalates further, then if it spirals out of control, then the United States would need Pakistani border to move other kind of attacks. Or imagine if they want to deploy troops. I doubt that will happen, but still, that's an eventuality. If anything like that happens, the United States wants access to the Pakistani border. So I think that is very, very important. Pakistan could play a major role. Look at it from Pakistan's point of view. Pakistan might find an opportunity to rebuild their relationship with the United States if they make themselves useful for the American involvement in Iran. This is what the Pakistanis did in 2001. From 1990s, throughout the 1990s, after Pakistan was drifting away from the United States, and Pakistanis were also supporting the Taliban. Pakistan was one of the three countries that had recognized the Taliban from 1996 to 2001. And after the September 11 attack, Pervez Musharraf basically opened up Pakistani bases for the Americans to join the Taliban. He just dropped the Taliban because he wanted to rebuild his relationship with the United States. So Asim Munir could look at the whole conflict and then see that this is an opportunity for Pakistan to make itself useful for the United States as the conflict is unfolding. This is also one of the reasons I told you at the beginning of this episode that India should have been mindful about what is happening in the region, because Iran had historically, India had historically a good relationship with Iran, whereas Pakistan and Iran had a lot of troubled blood. There is no religious solidarity between Pakistan and Iran. Many people in India, they were initially cheering the Israeli attack on Iran, and that was what should I say? That was a misguided approach, because Iran on the other side is a very important country for India. Iran is the gateway to India to Central Asia. India has invested billions of dollars in Iran, in the Chabahar project, and Chabahar and Iran is also part of the North-South Transport Corridor, which connects India through Azerbaijan and Russia through Iran, basically to Northern Europe. Instability in Iran is not in India's interest. And Pakistan is an American ally. Pakistan has always been an American ally. There were ups and downs in their relationship, but throughout the Cold War, Pakistan was an American ally. So it is highly possible that Pakistan could basically join hands with the United States in one way or the other way to weaken Iran. They don't care. So it is not definitely in India's interest, destabilized Iran. So India should actually factor that in while formulating a policy on the ongoing conflict against Iran. Okay, is this caused by ideological interests or ideological rivalry or strategic interests? So primarily strategic interests. Ideology plays a role because we know that one is a Jewish country, and which is ruled by Jewish extremist parties now, right-wing parties now, and the other is a Shia theocracy. From 1979 onwards, Iran has been ruled by the clergy. They have an elected parliament and elected president, but still the ultimate authority, is the supreme leader, who is a clerical leader. So you have, and Iran after the revolution has taken a very strong position towards Israel, right? And it also supports the Palestinian cause, whereas Israel sees on the other side Iran as the major threat to Israel's interest in the region, because just look at West Asia. So my point is that, so in this sense, that ideological rivalry is there definitely because of the religious angle, the ideological angle. But to understand the strategic interest, just look at the map. When Israel looks at the map, it is surrounded by Arab countries, right? And Arab countries means all the Arab countries are American allies. When Israel is basically America's closest, it is supported, backed politically, geopolitically, and militarily by the United States. And Saudi Arabia, UAE, and all these countries are also American allies. So Israel doesn't face any threat from the Arab countries, whether it is Jordan or Egypt. Jordan and Egypt are treaty allies. They have also signed normalization agreements with the Israelis. The only country that doesn't host American military personnel, the country that tends to support the Palestinians and opposes is Iran. Iran doesn't have, just look at the map, the only country in the region that doesn't host American bases. Iraq has 2,000 American soldiers. Qatar has 10,000 American soldiers. UAE has 4,000 American soldiers and an air base. Saudi Arabia has 2,000 American soldiers. Kuwait, Oman, they all host American soldiers. Bahrain hosts America's fleet in the region. Seventh Fleet in the region. So you look at the region. Iran is the only country that doesn't have American soldiers, and it to attack the Israelis or the occupation of the Palestinian territories. So Israel looks at Iran and sees a major enemy. So I think this strategic interest plays a very important role. So that is what is leading to the conflict. So Israelis were, ideally Netanyahu would like to destroy the state, Iranian state. If he is not able to do that, he at least wants to destroy Iran's entire nuclear facilities. Even that he is not able to do it on his own. So he very successfully he dragged the Americans in conflict. The United States did it for the Israel. Because if you look at Barack Obama or other American presidents, their main focus was not to destroy Iran's nuclear program, but to prevent the weaponization of the program. But Israel's approach was to destroy Iran's nuclear program and continue to weaken and diminish Iran's regional standing. And Trump has signed up to the Israeli view of Iran. And that's what we are witnessing now. Yes. Yeah, I also, until June 13th, I thought that Trump's domestic constituency will have an impact on his foreign policy. Until June 13th, I also believe, I thought Trump could be different not because of any, not because I see any added virtue in him, but because of the same reason. Because, this war is not popular in the United States, especially in America's right wing, the MAGA base. So they were very against the United States getting dragged into this war on behalf of Israel. You look at Tucker Carlson or several other, even Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon was Trump's political guru. And Bannon said, Bibi started this, let Bibi finish this off. Bibi started this fully realizing that he won't be able to meet his objectives, but you just let him finish it off. This is what Steve Bannon said. So there are clear ruptures. So that's why J.D. Vance stepped in and then posted a long tweet 2 days ago, basically defending President Donald Trump, saying that the president has to take a decision. That's why I said. So there are divisions. But the moment Israel went in on June 13th, I realized that Trump was fully in. So when it comes to Israel, I just posted it this morning. When it comes to Israel and Iran, I think Trump is the establishment. Trump is the deep state. There is no difference between him and President George W. Bush. So he talks about peacemaking. A lot of noises about this. But I think in the case of Iran, he was all in from the very beginning. Just look at the chronology. It was Donald Trump who pulled the United States out of a functional nuclear deal in 2018, right? And it was Donald Trump who assassinated General Qasem Soleimani in 2020. And then Trump returns to power. And it was after Trump returned to power, he offered dialogue to the Iranians. And when Trump's man, Steve Witkoff, started holding negotiations with Iran, Israel started preparing for its attack. And when the Americans and the Iranians were still technically in talks, Israel goes in, starting the war. And basically sabotaging America's diplomacy. Was Trump angry? No, he wasn't. He called it an excellent strike. And then he said that he was still open for dialogue. But then he could support the Israeli attack. So, what I believe is that Trump was all in. When Trump offered talks for the Iranians, what he wanted was a complete surrender, not a talk. So when the Iranians surrender, he gave his go-ahead to the Israelis. The Israelis goes in. The Americans knew that Israel doesn't have the capability. If I knew this, if I have been saying this, imagine the United States with all its intelligence powers, they knew it very well in advance, right? That Israel will not be able to meet the objective. So the Americans knew it. Israel, their primary objective is basically weaken the regime. That's what the Israelis tried to do. Because you take down Iran's missile defense system, which the Israelis successfully did. They took out the missile defense systems, but not missile launchers or the missile capability. But the defenses were destroyed. They wanted to weaken didn't happen. That actually backfired. The regime swiftly replaced the assassinated generals and it consolidated itself. That's what we are witnessing now in Iran. But Israel basically took Israel defenses, interceptors, and then the Americans go in. Trump said that he will take a decision for 2 weeks. That was deception. He was basically trying to confuse the Iranians. I knew this. We knew this. And Trump was basically whining about not getting Nobel Prize 2 days ago. That was another deception tactic. He wanted to confuse the Iranians. But the Iranians actually got confused on June 13th. But I was sure that the Iranians knew an American attack was imminent. So I was talking to someone in Tehran last night, and I was told that an attack is. So the second time the Iranians didn't bite, they knew the attack was coming. So if you ask me, Trump was all in throughout. So the question about China I have already answered, I think, in one of the earlier, talking about China's earlier answers. So China is, to understand China, China has interest, but take a historical view. China is reluctant to get involved militarily in conflicts. The Chinese are unlikely to do it because, yes, this is affecting China, but China might also be looking in a different way. That if the United States gets stuck in the Middle East for another war, so the Chinese wouldn't face a major challenge. They will be okay with that. The Russians on the other side would face a major setback because Syria is already gone. Iran is Russia's last remaining fort of influence in West Asia. If Iran also falls, and if Iran gets weakened or destabilized, Russian influence in the region would substantially diminish. But the Russians, I guess, are unable to do anything because they are stuck in Ukraine, right? So otherwise, Russia will have much bigger strategic space to maneuver in the region, which they lack at this point of time, which also explains why the Israelis started the war after the Syrian government has fallen. So everything is connected. You can see the chain reaction. If Bashar al-Assad is still the president in Syria or Hezbollah still remained a powerful force, Israel wouldn't have launched this attack, right? So they saw that Iran has been weakened over the last many months. So that's why the Israelis actually went in. And did IPAC play a role? Definitely. IPAC played a role. IPAC would continue to play a role. The lobby is very powerful in the United States. And this is the best example, right? Because this war is, just think about it. This is not in America's, this war is not for the United States. This war is for Israel. The United States did not launch the war. Israel launched the war when the United States was still in talks with Iran. So who started the war? Israel launched the war. And why did Israel launch the war? Because Israel wanted to destroy Iran's nuclear facilities completely or push Iran towards state collapse. And the United States was talking to Iran. Then Israel goes and attacks Iran. But the United States, what did the United States did? Did it condemn Israel for sabotaging its diplomacy? No. It joined the war to attack Iran. So what does it tell us? It tells us that the lobby is very powerful. The lobby gets it. The lobby can bring the United States in a war to fight a war in the Middle East on behalf of the Israelis. And this is done by a president who attacked America's 4-hour wars in the Middle East. This is done by a president who built a career opposing America's wars in this region, and a vice president who has written a book about basically what the United States, one generation of the United States went through because of the wars fought by what they call the globalists. Whether it is Vance and Trump continue to attack the globalists, and now what happened? They themselves became globalists now. They are not peacemakers. Donald Trump is not a peacemaker. So, you don't see any major difference between Trump and Bush now. So, yes, the lobby played a major role. That's what it is. Why OIC isn't intervening? What OIC can do when the United States is in the war? OIC can do anything. I doubt that they will even issue a statement. I mean, when the United States is there, I think it's very, very limited what OIC can do or what even America's allies in the Gulf can do. Don't even expect a condemnation. How will this affect India depending on how or where the war is headed to? As I said earlier, if Iran shuts down the Strait of Hormuz, that will be disastrous for India, for India's energy security. Prices will go up. And if Iran attacks American bases in the Gulf, that means millions of Indians will get stranded in the Gulf region because the airspace could be closed. If oil facilities or American bases are attacked in the region, the United States will escalate its attack on Iran. So millions of Indians will get stranded in the Gulf. Again, if Iran is completely destabilized, that will impact India's continental strategy. India's plans to build better connectivity projects basically through Central Asia. So it is a multifaceted setback for India. Yes, India has good relationship with both Israel and Iran. But here, who launched the war? Israel launched the war. And destabilizing Iran is not in India's interest. So this said earlier that India should take a bolder position here, because India should tell the Israelis, its friends, and the Americans, its partners, that this war is not in India's interest. Okay? So thank you very much. Thanks for joining me. We will meet again to discuss the same topic. Thank you very much.